Jake Miller loved his small house in Sunset Ridge. The neighborhood was quiet and clean. The houses were not too big and not too small. Most people who lived there were friendly. Jake worked from home as a computer programmer. He liked having a peaceful place to work and think. The neighborhood had rules that everyone had to follow. These rules were made by the Homeowners Association, which people called the HOA. Linda Carter was the president of the HOA. She was about 50 years old and took her job very seriously. Linda had been president for 3 years. She walked around the neighborhood every day looking for problems. If someone's grass was too long, or if they painted their house the wrong color, Linda would write them a letter with a fine. Jake tried to stay away from HOA drama. He paid his fees on time and kept his house looking nice. He cut his grass every week and painted his fence when it needed it. Jake thought this would keep Linda happy and away from his door. Everything was normal until March came around. Jake got his electric bill and almost choked on his coffee. The bill was $200 higher than usual. He lived alone and was very careful about using electricity. He always turned off lights when he left a room. His computer and TV were the only things he used regularly. Jake called the electric company right away. The woman on the phone was nice but not very helpful. She said the meter reading was correct. She told him to check if any of his appliances were broken. Jake spent the whole weekend checking everything in his house. His refrigerator was working fine. His air conditioner was old, but running normally. Nothing seemed wrong. The next month, the same thing happened. His bill was almost $200 more than it should be. Jake was getting worried and angry. Money was not unlimited for him. He worked hard and tried to save money when he could share. These high bills were eating up his savings. Jake decided to call an electrician. The man came to his house and spent 3 hours checking everything. He looked at all the wires and outlets. He tested the electrical box and checked for problems. After all that work, the electrician told Jake that everything looked perfect. There were no broken wires or bad connections anywhere. By May, Jake had paid 3 months of crazy high electric bills. He was losing sleep over this mystery. Something was using a lot of electricity in his house, but he could not find what it was. He started unplugging everything when he went to bed. He even turned off his refrigerator one night, but the bill stayed high. Jake decided to buy a special meter that would show him exactly when electricity was being used. The device cost him $100, but he was desperate. He set it up and started watching the numbers very carefully. What he found made no sense at all. Every night around 11 o'clock, his house started using a huge amount of electricity. The meter showed numbers that were 3 times higher than normal. This would go on until about 6 in the morning. Then, everything would go back to normal. Jake was completely confused. He was asleep during those hours. All his lights were off. His computer was off. What could be using so much power? Jake started staying awake at night to solve this mystery. He walked around his house in the dark, looking for anything that might be using electricity. He checked every room twice. He looked in his basement and attic. He even went outside with a flashlight to check his air conditioner unit. Nothing was running that should not be running. On a warm night in late May, Jake decided to take his trash to the curb. It was almost midnight, and the neighborhood was very quiet. Most people were asleep. Jake dragged his trash can to the street and was walking back to his house when he noticed something strange. There was an orange extension cord coming out from behind his house. Jake had never seen this cord before. He followed it with his eyes and saw that it went across his backyard. The cord went under his fence and into the yard next door. That was where Linda Carter lived. Jake's heart started beating fast. He got his phone and turned on the flashlight. He walked very quietly to the back of his house. The extension cord was plugged into an outdoor outlet that Jake rarely used. The outlet was hidden behind some bushes, which was why he had never noticed. The cord before Jake followed the cord with his light. It went under his fence through a small gap. On the other side, in Linda's yard, the cord was connected to a big white car. Even in the dark, Jake could see it was a Tesla. Linda had bought the electric car about 4 months ago. She was always bragging about how much money she was saving on gas. Jake stood there in his backyard holding his phone light on the cord. He could not believe what he was seeing. Linda Carter, the president of his HOA, was stealing electricity from his house. She was using his power to charge her expensive Tesla every single night. Jake felt angry and shocked at the same time. Linda was always telling other people to follow the rules. She gave out fines for the smallest problems. She acted like she was better than everyone else in the neighborhood. But here she was, stealing from him every single night for months. Jake thought about all the money he had spent on his high electric bills. He calculated quickly in his head. If this had been going on since Linda got her car in January, she had probably stolen hundreds of dollars of electricity from him. All this time, he had been paying for her to drive around for free. Jake wanted to march over to Linda's house right then and wake her up. He wanted to yell at her and demand his money back, but he stopped himself. He knew Linda would just deny everything. She would probably try to turn it around and blame him for something. Jake needed proof before he did anything. Jake took pictures of the cord with his phone. He took pictures of where it was plugged in at his house and where it connected to Linda's Tesla. He made sure the photos clearly showed what was happening. Then he went back inside his house and sat down to think. Jake realized this explained everything. The timing was perfect. Linda would plug in her car around 11 at night when everyone was asleep. She would unplug it early in the morning before people woke up. She had been very careful to hide what she was doing, but now Jake knew the truth. His HOA president was a thief. She had been stealing from him for months while acting like she was the moral leader of the neighborhood. Jake smiled to himself in the dark. Linda had no idea that she had picked the wrong person to steal from. Jake was a computer programmer. He was good at solving problems, and he was very patient. Linda was about to learn that some people do not let others walk all over them. Jake decided he would not sleep that night. Instead, he would start planning how to get his money back and teach Linda Carter a lesson she would never forget. Jake did not sleep at all that night. He sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and started making a plan. He knew that just having photos would not be enough. Linda was smart and had been the HOA president for years. She knew how to talk her way out of trouble. If Jake wanted to win against her, he needed more proof. The next morning, Jake called in sick to work. He spent the whole day researching what Linda was doing to him. He found out that stealing electricity was a real crime. The law called it theft of services. If someone stole enough electricity, they could go to jail. Jake felt better knowing that Linda was not just being rude, she was actually breaking the law. Jake also looked up how much electricity a Tesla used when charging. The numbers were shocking. Linda's car used about as much power in one night as Jake's whole house used, in 3 days. No wonder his bills were so high. Jake did some math and figured out that Linda had stolen about $800 of electricity from him over 4 months. $800 was a lot of money for Jake. That was more than he spent on food in 2 months. He felt angry all over again, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting mad would not help him. He needed to be smart about this. Jake decided to buy a security camera. He went to the electronics store and bought a small camera that could record at night. The camera was expensive, but Jake thought it was worth it. He set up the camera in his bedroom window where it could see his backyard and the electrical outlet. That night, Jake stayed awake to watch what Linda would do. At exactly 11:15, he saw her back door open. Linda came out wearing dark clothes and looked around carefully. She moved very quietly across her yard to the fence. She reached through the gap and plugged the orange cord into Jake's outlet. Then she connected the other end to her Tesla. Jake watched all of this happen on his camera. He was recording everything. Linda was being very sneaky about what she was doing. She clearly knew it was wrong. After she got her car plugged in, she went back inside her house and turned off all her lights. Jake stayed awake until 6 in the morning. Right on schedule, Linda came back outside. She unplugged her car and carefully wound up the extension cord. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then took the cord into her garage. Jake got all of this on camera too. For the next 2 weeks, Jake recorded Linda every single night. She did the exact same thing every time. She would wait until the neighborhood was completely quiet, then sneak out to steal Jake's electricity. Some nights she looked more nervous than others. A few times she almost got caught by neighbors who were coming home late, but she always managed to hide. Jake learned Linda's schedule perfectly. She never missed a night. Rain or shine, Linda was out there stealing from him. Jake started to understand how she had been able to do this for so long without getting caught. She was very careful and very consistent. During the day, Jake researched Linda's background. He found out some interesting things. Linda had bought her Tesla with money from a big insurance settlement. She had been in a car accident 2 years ago and got a lot of money from it. Linda always told people she was saving money by driving an electric car, but Jake now knew the truth. She was saving money by stealing electricity from her neighbors. Jake also found out that Linda had been in trouble before. She used to live in another neighborhood where she was also the HOA president. Jake found some old newspaper articles about complaints against her. People said she was too strict and unfair. Eventually, so many people complained that Linda had to quit. That was when she moved to Sunset Ridge. This information made Jake realize that Linda had a pattern of causing problems. She liked having power over people. She used her position as HOA president to get away with things that normal people could not do. Jake was probably not the first person Linda had stolen from. Jake decided to check his neighbors' electric bills. He carefully asked a few people he was friendly with about their electricity costs. 2 of his neighbors mentioned that their bills had been higher than usual lately, but they thought it was just because of the weather. Jake suspected that Linda might be stealing from other people too, but he could not prove it yet. While Jake was investigating, Linda continued her normal daytime behavior. She walked around the neighborhood every day, looking for rule violations. She sent out letters to people about small problems with their houses. She acted like she was the perfect neighbor who never did anything wrong. One afternoon, Linda came to Jake's door with a letter. She told him that his mailbox needed to be painted. Jake looked at his mailbox and saw that it had one small scratch on it. The scratch was so tiny that most people would never notice it. But Linda had found it and was giving Jake 30 days to fix it or pay a fine. Jake took the letter and thanked Linda politely. Inside, he was amazed at how fake she was being. Here she was, stealing hundreds of dollars from him every month, while complaining about a tiny scratch on his mailbox. Jake almost laughed at how ridiculous it was. That night, Jake watched Linda steal his electricity again. This time, he paid attention to how long her car took to charge. He timed everything carefully and took notes. Jake was building a complete record of Linda's crimes. He had video evidence, timing records, and calculations of how much money she had stolen. Jake also started taking pictures during the day. He photographed Linda's Tesla and wrote down its license plate number. He took pictures of the extension cord in her garage when she left the door open. He photographed the outlet she was using at his house. Jake was creating a file that would prove everything Linda had done. After 2 weeks of watching and recording, Jake felt ready for the next step. He had enough evidence to prove that Linda was stealing from him. But Jake did not want to just catch her. He wanted to make sure she could never do this to anyone else again. Jake spent a weekend organizing all his evidence. He made copies of everything and put it all in a folder. He had photos, videos, calculations, and a timeline of Linda's thefts. He also researched what his legal options were. Jake learned that he could call the police or take Linda to court. Both options sounded good to him. But before Jake did any of that, he decided to give Linda one chance to make things right. He would confront her with his evidence and see what she said. If Linda admitted what she had done and paid him back, maybe they could solve this quietly. But if Linda tried to lie or threaten him, Jake was ready to take things to the next level. Jake looked at his folder full of evidence and smiled. Linda thought she was so smart, but she had no idea what was coming. Tomorrow, Jake would knock on her door and show her that her days of stealing were over. Saturday morning came with bright sunshine and clear skies. Jake had been awake since 5 in the morning, thinking about what he was going to do. He ate breakfast slowly and reviewed all his evidence one more time. Everything was perfect. He had videos, photos, and records that clearly showed Linda stealing his electricity for weeks. Jake put on his best shirt and grabbed his folder of evidence. He wanted to look serious but not angry when he talked to Linda. This was going to be a business conversation, not a shouting match. Jake walked across his yard and knocked on Linda's front door. Linda opened the door wearing her usual fake smile. She was dressed nicely and had her hair done perfectly. She always looked like she was ready to judge other people for not being as perfect as she was. "Good morning, Jake," Linda said in her sweet voice. "What can I do for you today?" Jake held up his folder. "I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come in?" Linda's smile got a little smaller, but she stepped back and let Jake into her living room. The house was very clean and expensive looking. Jake could see Linda's Tesla key sitting on the kitchen counter. "What's this about?" Linda asked, sitting down across from Jake. Jake opened his folder and pulled out the first photo. It showed the orange extension cord plugged into his electrical outlet. He placed it on the coffee table between them. "I know you've been stealing my electricity to charge your Tesla," Jake said calmly. "I have proof." Linda looked at the photo and her face went completely white. For a few seconds, she did not say anything. Jake could see her mind working, trying to figure out what to say. "I don't know what you're talking about," Linda finally said. But her voice was shaky now. Jake pulled out more photos. Pictures of Linda sneaking around at night. Pictures of the cord connected to her car. Pictures taken over 2 weeks that showed exactly what she had been doing. "I have video too," Jake said. "I recorded you every night for 2 weeks. I have everything timed and documented." Linda stared at the photos spread across her coffee table. Jake could see that she knew she was caught. There was no way to deny what the pictures showed. "Okay, fine," Linda said, her sweet voice completely gone now. "So what if I used a little bit of your electricity? It's not like you were using it anyway." Jake could not believe what he was hearing. Linda was actually trying to say that stealing was okay because Jake was not using all his electricity. A little bit? Jake pulled out his calculator and bills. "You stole $800 worth of electricity from me over 4 months. That's not a little bit." Linda's eyes got wide when she heard the number. $800? That's impossible. It's just a car charger. Jake showed her his math. He had calculated exactly how much electricity Linda's Tesla used and how much it cost. The numbers were clear and accurate. "You've been stealing from me every single night," Jake said, "while you walk around this neighborhood giving people fines. For tiny problems, you've been committing a real crime." Linda was quiet for a long moment. Jake thought maybe she was going to apologize and offer to pay him back. Instead, Linda's face changed completely. The fake sweetness was gone, and now she looked angry and mean. "You know what?" Linda said, standing up. "Even if I did use some of your electricity, you should be happy to help. I'm trying to save the environment by driving an electric car. The whole community should support that." Jake stared at her in amazement. Linda was actually trying to make herself sound like a hero for stealing from him. "Besides," Linda continued, "it's only a few dollars here and there. You're being petty and selfish about this." "A few dollars?" Jake stood up too. "You just heard me say it was $800. That's not a few dollars." Linda waved her hand like the money did not matter. "You make good money with your computer job. You can afford it. I'm on a fixed income from my insurance settlement." Jake realized that Linda was completely crazy. She actually believed that stealing was okay because she decided Jake could afford it. She thought being the HOA president gave her the right to take whatever she wanted from her neighbors. "Linda, you need to pay me back and stop stealing my electricity," Jake said firmly. "What you're doing is illegal. It's called theft of services and you could go to jail for it." Linda laughed, but it was not a nice laugh. "Go to jail? For using a little electricity? You're being ridiculous." $800 is not a little electricity," Jake repeated. "And yes, you can go to jail for stealing that much." Linda's face got red and angry. "You know what, Jake? You'd better be very careful about threatening me. I run this HOA, and I can make your life very difficult." Now Jake was getting angry too. Linda was not sorry at all. She was actually threatening him. "What are you going to do?" Jake asked. "Give me a fine for having a clean house and perfect yard?" "Maybe your grass is a 1/4 inch too long," Linda said with a mean smile. "Maybe your mailbox needs repainting. Maybe I'll find all sorts of violations around your property." Linda walked closer to Jake, trying to intimidate him. I can fine you every month for different things. I can make you come to HOA meetings every week. I can make your life miserable until you move away. Jake looked at Linda and realized she was exactly like a playground bully. She thought she could scare people into letting her do whatever she wanted. So you're not going to stop stealing my electricity? Jake asked. I'm not stealing anything, Linda said. I'm using community resources for community good. And if you don't like it, you can move somewhere else. Jake gathered up his photos and put them back in his folder. He had given Linda a chance to do the right thing, and she had completely failed. She was not sorry. She was not going to pay him back. She was not going to stop stealing. Instead, she was threatening him and trying to make him the bad guy. This conversation is over, Jake said, walking toward the door. You'd better watch yourself, Jake, Linda called after him. I run this community and I don't forget people who cross me. You're going to regret coming over here with your stupid accusations. Jake walked out Linda's front door and back to his house. He was angry, but he was also relieved. Now he knew exactly what kind of person Linda was. She was a bully and a thief who thought she was above the law. Jake had tried to handle this the nice way, but Linda had made it clear that would not work. She wanted to play games and make threats. Fine. Jake was a computer programmer who was very good at solving complicated problems. Linda had no idea what she had just started. That night, Jake watched Linda steal his electricity again. But this time, he was not just gathering evidence. This time, Jake was planning his revenge. Linda thought she was so smart and powerful. Tomorrow, Jake would show her what happened when you picked on the wrong person. Jake spent the rest of Saturday thinking about what Linda had said to him. She was not sorry at all. She actually thought stealing from him was okay. Even worse, she had threatened to make his life difficult with fake HOA violations. Linda thought she could bully him into giving up. Jake had always been a peaceful person. He liked to solve problems by talking and being reasonable. But Linda had made it clear that talking would not work with her. She only understood power and control. If Jake wanted to stop her from stealing, he would have to speak her language. That evening, Jake sat at his computer and started researching. As a programmer, Jake knew a lot about computer security and how electronic devices worked. He was curious about Tesla cars and how they connected to the internet. What he found was very interesting. Tesla cars were basically computers on wheels. They connected to Wi-Fi networks to get software updates and to use internet features. The cars also had mobile apps that let owners control them from their phones. Jake discovered that Tesla's security was not as good as it should be. There had been problems in the past where hackers got into Tesla systems. Jake learned that when Linda plugged her car into his electrical outlet, something else happened too. Her Tesla automatically connected to his Wi-Fi network to get internet access. This meant Linda was not just stealing his electricity, she was also stealing his internet service without permission. Jake checked his Wi-Fi router and found Linda's Tesla in the list of connected devices. The car had been using his internet every night for months. This was another crime on top of the electricity theft. Jake now had even more evidence against Linda. But Jake was not thinking about evidence anymore. He was thinking about justice. Linda had refused to stop stealing from him. She had threatened him and acted like she was above the law. Jake decided it was time to teach Linda a lesson she would never forget. Jake spent all day Sunday learning everything he could about Tesla. Security problems. He found articles written by computer security experts who had studied Tesla cars. These experts had found ways to get into Tesla systems and control the cars remotely. They published their findings to help Tesla fix the problems. The security holes were still there in older Tesla software. Linda's car was not very new, and Jake could see that it had not been updated with the latest security patches. This made her car vulnerable to the same attacks that security experts had already discovered. Jake was careful to only use methods that security researchers had already made public. He was not trying to invent new ways to hack cars. He was just using knowledge that was already available to anyone who looked for it. On Monday night, Jake put his plan into action. He waited until Linda plugged her Tesla into his electrical outlet and connected to his Wi-Fi. Then Jake used his computer to access her car's systems. Getting into the Tesla was easier than Jake had expected. The car's security was designed to keep out random criminals, not someone with Jake's computer skills who had direct access to the network the car was using. Within an hour, Jake had complete control over Linda's Tesla. Jake could have done many different things to the car. He could have made it play loud music in the middle of the night. He could have turned on all the lights and honked the horn. He could have made the car drive itself around the neighborhood. But Jake did not want to cause accidents or hurt anyone. Instead, Jake decided to make Linda's car completely useless. He changed settings deep in the car's computer system that controlled how everything worked. Jake modified the charging system so the car could not take in electricity. He changed the starting system so the engine would not turn on. He altered the display system so error messages would appear on all the screens. Jake was very careful about what he did. He only changed software settings, not anything physical. This meant a Tesla technician could fix everything by resetting the car's computer systems. The car would not be permanently damaged, but it would be completely broken until Linda paid a lot of money to get it repaired. The most clever part of Jake's plan was the timing. He waited until Linda's car was almost finished charging for the night. Her Tesla had stolen as much electricity as it could hold. Then Jake activated all his changes at exactly the same time. When Linda woke up Tuesday morning and tried to drive her car to work, she would find a very expensive piece of junk in her driveway. The car that had been stealing Jake's power would not start, would not charge, and would be full of error messages that made no sense. Jake made sure his changes would trigger right after Linda unplugged her car from his electrical outlet. The timing would be perfect. Linda would steal his electricity one last time, then discover her car was completely broken. Jake also prepared for what would happen next. He knew Linda would immediately suspect him. She would probably come over to his house and accuse him of breaking her car. Jake was ready for that conversation. Jake printed out all his evidence about Linda's electricity theft. He organized his photos, videos, and calculations into a neat package. He also researched the laws about what Linda had done to him. Theft of services worth $800 was a serious crime in his state. Linda could face real jail time if Jake called the police. Jake also looked up information about Tesla repairs. He found out that getting a Tesla fixed after software problems could be very expensive. The car would need to be towed to a special Tesla service center. Technicians would have to spend days figuring out what was wrong and fixing all the computer systems. The repair bill could easily be over $1,000. This made Jake smile. Linda had stolen $800 from him over 4 months. Now she would have to pay even more than that just to get her car working again. The crime would end up costing her more money than she had saved by stealing. Jake went to bed Monday night feeling satisfied. Tomorrow morning would bring chaos to Linda's perfect little world. Her expensive Tesla would be nothing but a big white paperweight in her driveway. And when she came over to accuse Jake of causing her problems, he would be ready with $800 worth of evidence, showing what a thief and liar she really was. Jake set his alarm for 6:30 Tuesday morning. He wanted to be awake when Linda discovered what had happened to her car. After months of watching Linda sneak around and steal from him, Jake was finally going to get some justice. Tomorrow would be a very interesting day. Tuesday morning started exactly as Jake had planned. His alarm went off at 6:30 and he quickly got dressed and made coffee. Jake sat by his kitchen window where he could see Linda's driveway. He did not have to wait long for the show to begin. At 7:15, Linda came out of her house wearing her work clothes and carrying her purse. She walked to her Tesla with confidence, just like every other morning. She pressed the button to unlock the car door, but nothing happened. Linda pressed the button again, harder this time. Still nothing. Jake watched Linda try to open her car door manually. When she finally got inside, Jake could see her pressing buttons and touching the screen. Even from his house, Jake could tell that something was very wrong with the car. Linda kept trying to start it, but the engine would not turn on. After 5 minutes of trying, Linda got out of her car and slammed the door. She walked around the Tesla, looking at it like it had personally insulted her. She got back in and tried starting it again. Jake could see her getting more frustrated by the minute. Linda finally gave up and went back inside her house. 10 minutes. Later, she came back out with her phone. She was clearly calling someone, probably Tesla customer service. Jake watched her talk on the phone for a long time, gesturing angrily at her car. At 8 o'clock, Linda marched across her yard toward Jake's house. She was walking fast and looked furious. Jake was ready for this moment. He had his folder of evidence sitting on his kitchen table, and he had practiced what he was going to say. Linda pounded on Jake's front door like she was trying to break it down. When Jake opened the door, Linda's face was red with anger. "What did you do to my car?" Linda shouted before Jake could even say hello. "Good morning, Linda," Jake said calmly. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Is there a problem with your Tesla?" "Don't play dumb with me," Linda snapped. "My car won't start, won't charge, and has error messages everywhere. You did something to it, and I want you to fix it right. Now." Jake pretended to look confused. "I'm just a computer programmer, Linda. I don't know anything about fixing cars. Have you tried calling Tesla customer service?" "I already called them," Linda said through gritted teeth. "They said my car has multiple system failures and needs to be towed to their service center. This is going to cost me thousands of dollars." "That sounds expensive," Jake said with fake sympathy. "I hope your insurance covers it." Linda stepped closer to Jake's door, trying to intimidate him. "I know you did this. You're some kind of computer hacker, aren't you? You broke into my car's computer system." Jake shook his head. "That sounds very complicated. I wouldn't know how to do something like that. Are you sure your car wasn't already having problems?" "My car was working perfectly until last night," Linda yelled. "Then this morning it's completely dead. That's not a coincidence." "Well," Jake said thoughtfully, "maybe someone should call the police about this. If you think someone committed a crime, that's what police are for." Linda's angry expression changed when Jake mentioned the police. She suddenly looked nervous instead of furious. "The police?" Linda repeated. "Of course," Jake said, pulling out his phone. "If someone really did break into your car's computer, that's a serious crime. We should definitely call the police right away. I actually have some things I'd like to discuss with them too." Jake started dialing 911, but Linda quickly grabbed his arm to stop him. "Wait," Linda said. "Maybe we don't need to involve the police just yet." "Why not?" Jake asked innocently. "If someone committed a crime, we should report it. Unless you have some reason for not wanting to talk to the police." Linda let go of Jake's arm and stepped back. Jake could see her mind working, trying to figure out what to do. She knew that calling the police would not help her. If the police came, Jake would show them all his evidence of Linda stealing electricity. Before Linda could answer, Jake heard voices coming from the street. Several of his neighbors had gathered around Linda's broken Tesla. They were talking loudly and pointing at the car. "Looks like your car trouble is attracting attention," Jake observed. Linda looked back at the crowd forming around her driveway. "This is all your fault," she hissed at Jake. "My fault that your car broke down?" Jake asked. "Linda, I think you're being paranoid. Cars break down sometimes. It happens to everyone." Jake walked out of his house toward the crowd of neighbors. Linda had no choice but to follow him. When they reached Linda's driveway, Jake counted 8 people standing around the Tesla. "What's wrong with Linda's car?" asked Mrs. Johnson from down the street. "It just died completely," said Mr. Roberts, from across the road. "Won't start, won't charge, error messages everywhere." Jake saw his opportunity. "That's too bad. Linda was just telling me how expensive this is going to be to fix. Speaking of expensive things, has anyone else noticed their electricity bills being higher than usual lately?" Several neighbors nodded. "Mine's been crazy high for months," said Mrs. Johnson. "I thought it was my old refrigerator." "Same here," agreed Mr. Roberts. "I even had an electrician check my house, but he couldn't find anything wrong." Jake pulled out his folder of evidence. "Well, I might have some information about that. Linda has been stealing electricity from my house for months to charge her Tesla." The neighbors went quiet and stared at Jake. Then they all turned to look at Linda, who had gone pale. "That's impossible," Mrs. Johnson said. Jake opened his folder and showed everyone the photos of the extension cord. He explained how Linda had been sneaking out every night to plug her car into his electrical outlet. He showed them his calculations, proving that Linda had stolen $800 worth of electricity. The neighbors were shocked. Several people started talking at once, asking questions and expressing disbelief. Linda tried to defend herself, but her explanations sounded weak and ridiculous. "I was trying to promote environmental responsibility," Linda said desperately. "Electric cars are good for the community." "By stealing from your neighbors?" Mr. Roberts asked angrily. "It was just a little electricity," Linda protested. "Jake makes good money. He can afford it." The crowd of neighbors was getting larger and angrier. More people came out of their houses to see what was happening. Jake showed his evidence to everyone who wanted to see it. The photos and videos were clear proof of what Linda had been doing. By 10 o'clock, 15 neighbors had gathered in Linda's driveway. Everyone was talking about Linda's theft and demanding answers. Several people said they wanted to call an emergency HOA meeting to remove Linda from her position as president. Linda was overwhelmed by the angry crowd. She kept trying to make excuses, but nobody believed her anymore. Finally, she broke down and admitted everything. "Fine," Linda shouted. "I used some of Jake's electricity, but I never meant to hurt anyone." $800 worth, Jake corrected. "And you threatened me when I asked you to stop." The neighbors were furious when they heard about the threats. They realized that Linda had been abusing her power as HOA president for a long time. Several people mentioned problems they had with Linda's unfair treatment and excessive fines. By noon, Linda was facing a complete rebellion from the neighborhood. The HOA board called an emergency meeting for that evening. Linda knew she was finished as president. She also knew that Jake could still call the police and have her arrested for theft. Defeated and humiliated, Linda agreed to all of Jake's demands. She would pay him back the $800 immediately. She would resign from the HOA board. She would write a public apology to the entire neighborhood, and she would never bother Jake again. Linda also had to pay over $1,200 to get her Tesla repaired. The technician spent 3 days figuring out what was wrong and fixing all the computer systems. 6 months later, Linda moved, away from Sunset Ridge. Jake's electricity bills returned to normal, and the neighborhood got a new HOA president who actually followed the rules. Jake became something of a local hero, known as the guy who outsmarted a corrupt HOA president. The story spread online and became famous as an example of how to fight back against bullies who abuse their power. Jake proved that sometimes the best way to deal with thieves is to speak their language and show them that crime does not pay.